Thanks for coming, everybody. I'm Margaret Becker. I'm Director of Disaster Recovery here at Legal Services NYC, and I've involuntarily become a flood insurance expert over the past 3 years. And hopefully today you guys can begin to move towards that too. But before we get started, I thought it would be really helpful if everyone could introduce themselves, just so we all know who everybody is, and you guys can use each other as a resource as you're starting to sort through some of these issues that clients will be bringing to you. So again, I'm Margaret Becker. People call me Meg. Jennifer, you want to start?
Yeah. My name is Jennifer Lazier. I'm the Program Associate at the Center for New York City Neighborhoods.
Hi, I'm David Bryce. I'm a program assistant in recovery and resiliency, also in the center.
Hello, my name is Dakari. I'm with the hotline at the center.
Hello everyone, I'm Maria Martino. I'm the Deputy Director at the Center. I just want to thank Meg so much for, she's done this training various times for our staff and for our network partners, and so can't thank you enough for taking the lead on training us all on flood insurance.
Yeah. My name is Errol Hilski. I'm a Program Associate at the Center for New York City Neighborhoods.
I'm Beth Malone from Neighborhood Housing Services of Brooklyn, and a specialist in the property casualty insurance and flood program.
Hi there.
Hi there.
And can I just say,
There's somebody in the room who doesn't know me.
I like to do that. I'll talk to you later.
So Beth is also a great resource not only on homeowners and other insurance, but on flood insurance as well. She started learning this stuff even before Sandy, so just keep her name in mind.
Yes, I'll be happy to help.
I'm Aaron. I'm at New York Legal Assistance Group as attorney.
I'm Jordan Shipley. I also work at New York Legal Assistance Group as a staff attorney.
Hi, I'm Maura Guillaume from Impact Brooklyn. I'm a program manager there for foreclosure and also a homeowner servicer counselor.
Mary Martin, and just known as the Police Program Coordinator, Foreclosure, and Homeowner Services.
I'm Danielle Harris. I'm with Neighborhood Housing Services of Northern Queens. I'm a counselor, foreclosure counselor, and motion counselor.
Hi, I'm Angela Davidson with Neighborhood Housing Services. I'm an expert like Beth in insurance. I work with Elizabeth. That's it.
Hi, everybody. Benita Dowling, Impact Brooklyn. I'm a homeowner foreclosure counselor.
Hi, Sarah Melavidoff. I work at the Center for New York City Neighborhoods and Program Associate in Recovery and Resilience.
I'm Gerard Miller from Neighborhood Housing Services in Bed Stuy, Neighborhood Services. I'm a financial literacy counselor and going to be the resiliency counselor.
Point person. Kevin Washington, Program Manager, Bed Stuy.
Oh, hi. I'm Tiffany Shameless. I'm at the Center for New York City Neighborhoods in the hotline.
So thanks everybody for coming again. What we're going to do today for 3 hours, believe it or not, is just cover the basics of flood insurance. We're going to be going in more in depth the next training with case examples and dealing with some of the more complicated concepts. I just want to stress again how important it is that you guys master this stuff, because errors in this kind of counseling can have significant impacts for homeowners, whether you're underestimating what kind of flood insurance savings they can achieve from resiliency, or if you're overestimating it. Again, that can make people make decisions one way or another that are pretty life-changing. So again, while I'm going, jump in anytime you want to ask a question. It's really important that we get, that everybody in the room understand this stuff well. If it's something we're going to cover later, I'll put your question off till later. If I don't cover it, please ask the question again. But don't feel shy at all about asking questions. This is very complicated material we're going to be going through. Okay, so first of all, the universe that your clients are in is one of increasing flood insurance costs. In many cases, just astronomical increases. in their flood insurance costs. And this is happening for two independent reasons. Like that people generally understand that there's been some remapping and that's going to affect people, but there's another reason, and that is actually happening now and is just as significant as the second reason, and that is the phase out of subsidies. So the two reasons flood insurance premiums are increasing is because subsidies on older homes, which is 80% of New York City's housing stock, are being phased out, and FEMA is revising the flood insurance maps. So in terms of the first one, again, these are homes that are built before November 16th, 1983. Any property built before that has not been substantially improved, we'll get into that detail later, but basically any home built before November 16th, 1983 is eligible now for a subsidized premium. Those homes are called pre-firm homes. So there are two definitions of the term pre-firm. People throw those terms around and you need to be sure which one you're dealing with. A home that was built before November 16th, 1983 is a pre-firm home, meaning it was built before the first flood insurance map was adopted in New York City. There is also a preliminary flood insurance rate map that is called the pre-firm. Right? These are two completely different concepts, but they're both called pre-firm. So again, as we're going through, I'll highlight which we're talking about, but just before you get, yourself unnecessarily confused, there are two meanings to the word pre-firm. Pre-firm. Okay, so the subsidies on pre-firm homes are being phased out. That's happening already, and FEMA is revising the flood map. So just yesterday, this universe changed a little bit. The maps that were, the preliminary firm maps that came out in 2013 after Sandy, totally unrelated to Sandy, they have been what the city's been working with as a template for what the future maps are going to look like. They have already been adopted into the building code. So any of your clients who are substantially changing their houses, like elevating it, they have to elevate it to the level required by the 2013 preliminary firm. Now, the 2013 preliminary firm had not yet been adopted for purposes of rating a flood insurance policy. And as a result of a challenge that the city filed last year and won yesterday, they will not be adopted for some time. So what happened was the city filed a technical challenge to the preliminary firm maps. So the preliminary firm maps were basically going to double the size of the flood zone in New York City, scooping in about 60,000 single-family owner-occupied homes, and they increased the elevation requirements. All right, that now is all on hold because FEMA, as a result of the city's challenge, has to go back and redo the maps. The expectation is, we're going to get new maps. One way or another, we're going to get new maps. The expectation is that the redrawing is going to scale back on the expansion. So the redrawn maps are going to be larger than the current flood zones, but less than what we anticipated in the preliminary firms. So how you counsel clients on this uncertainty is something we're going to put off for next week because there's a lot more complicated things, but it's not going to be easy, right? Because we no longer have something firm, so to speak, to point to in the future. So again, the city has to adopt the revised firms once they're redone, firm being flood insurance rate map, in order to continue for anyone in New York City to be able to purchase flood insurance through the federal flood insurance program, right? It's not an option for them. So the city has no choice but to adopt this in order for anybody to be able to purchase flood insurance in the future. But it's gotten more complicated in a good way as a result of the legal actions the city took and succeeded in. All right, 2 reasons rates are increasing. You need to talk to your clients about both these reasons, because both of them make a hit on insurance premiums. All right, so this is the simplified version of what mitigation looks like. So if you start over here, this is a house that has a basement. Its lowest floor is 4 feet below the anticipated flood level. Their premium is $9,500. If they can get their house up, their lowest floor up a little higher, so that, like in this example, they're only, maybe a foot or 2 below the flood level, their premium is going to drop dramatically. If they can elevate their house so that they're 2 feet or more above the flood level, then they're looking at incredible savings. So again, for your clients, any of them who can elevate their homes, and they're going to be required by the building code to elevate them 2 feet above the base flood level. Anybody who can do that should do that, because that is the closest thing they're going to get to a guarantee of affordability in the future. All the other mitigation options that we're going to talk about, like basement fill-in, filling in a crawl space, adding flood vents, are not going to get them close to this. The one other thing that might work is abandoning the first floor, but again, we'll go to that. So this is the general picture. The farther you are, the farther your home's lowest floor for rating, a concept we're going to talk about later, the farther that is below the anticipated flood level, the base flood elevation, the worse your premiums are going to look. So you're going to be counseling people about not only what their house, what their situation is going to be now, but the kind of effect that different mitigations can have on it. All right, so this is the end point. This is where we're going to be getting to, but I wanted to lay it out now. For those of you that can't really read it, we've got this as a handout. This is, you sure you're looking at the Beach 29th Street home? This is an actual home in Queens, and what I've done here is laid out the different variables that affect these, and then the 4 diagrams are different mitigation options, and then here is the effect on premiums of those different mitigation options. So this is basically what you're going to do for your client. You don't have to draw a picture, though I actually find it very helpful to draw a picture if you have that ability. All right, so let's just go through what these different measurements are, because these are the kind of things that you're going to need to have a handle on in terms of counseling your clients. Okay, so here's sea level. So the lowest point there is sea level. The next one up, the green line, that's ground level. The difference between these two is very important, because if you tell somebody, okay, the FEMA map says your elevation requirement is 10 feet, people think that you're talking about ground level, 10 feet up from the ground level. That's not the case. It's 10 feet up from sea level. So, and most ground levels, it varies a lot. I've seen ground level as high as 15 feet. I've seen ground level as low as 3 feet. Beth has seen ground levels below sea level. That's a small set of cases. But the difference between these two things is not only going to have a huge impact on rates, but also impact your client's mitigation options. Okay, so we've got sea level, we've got ground level, and we've got this blue line in the middle is the current base flood elevation. So base flood elevation is under the current maps, the maps that are in effect now, the ones that were adopted in 1983. This is the current expected flood level, right? So it's a few feet above ground level in this case. For this particular property, the future base flood elevation is a few feet higher than that. And again, each of these levels, ground level, current BFE, and future BFE, are going to be different for every single property, because they're very much specific to projections of how water flows and things like that. All right, so in this case, so if we look at what's the current flood zone, AE, that's a high risk zone. Again, we're going to break this down. This is just a preview of where we're going. The future flood zone is still AE, still a high-risk zone. The current base flood elevation is 8.9 feet. So the blue line is 8.9 feet above sea level. The future base flood elevation requirement is 10 feet. The purple line is 10 feet above sea level. What is now in doubt as a result of this victory that the city had yesterday is this stuff, right? This stuff is not changing, and this stuff is going to have a significant impact on your clients. All right, so the first house as is, if this is a 2-story house with a basement. These little pictures down here are supposed to represent like a boiler and a water heater and things like that. It's a basement with machinery in it. Machinery is the technical term that FEMA uses. It means machinery that is integral to the home: air conditioning, heating, electrical, and plumbing. Since it has a basement, part of it is below ground, part of it is above ground. It's got steps going up to the front door that reflect, the height of the portion of the basement that's above ground, and then it's got 2 stories. Rates differ depending on whether you're talking about a 1-story home, a 2-story home, whether it's got a basement or not, and again, we'll get into that. Under this house scenario, with these relationships between ground level BFE and future BFE, we can know certain things about their premium. Since this is a pre-1983 house, they're eligible for the temporary subsidy, the pre-firm subsidy, meaning a house, again, that was built before the first firm was adopted. Their premium on with the temporary subsidy is $3,900. That's going to be phasing out. Their current unsubsidized premium, by current I mean using these currently in effect flood predictions. Their current unsubsidized premium is $5,263. That's where their $3,900 is going to be stepping up in annual increases until it reaches about $5,200. So that's their future that it's not going to change. That's not affected by what the city's victory. All right, let's say that this is close to what's going to happen in the future. Their future unsubsidized premium, if they make no changes to their house, is $6,162. Again, this is an estimate because the rates change a little bit, but it's in the ballpark, right? Okay, so then the first mitigation option they have, the cheapest, simplest, is raising their utilities. So they took the machinery out of the basement and put it up somewhere above the flood level. It can go in the attic, it can go anywhere above the flood elevation. So that's something that is reflected in their rates, but the rate credit for that is tiny. Their current premium drops from $5,200 to $4,900. Their future premium drops by just about $150. They're not gonna, this is not the difference between keeping and losing the home, right? I mean, what this whole scenario is about preventing people from getting foreclosed on, right? Because if you've got a mortgage, your insurance costs are built into your mortgage. If you can't afford your insurance cost, you're gonna be in default on your mortgage and on your way to foreclosure. So this is, people with mortgages in high-risk flood zones do not have the option to drop flood insurance. We'll go into more detail about how much they have to cover, how much they have to carry, and how they can try to adjust that, but it's not an option to not have flood insurance. It's going to be baked into their mortgage premium. Inability to afford the flood insurance means default on the mortgage. All right, so if they fill in their utilities, they're going to save a little. They're going to have a lot less flood damage, right? Because if your power stays on after a flood, you're going to be home a lot faster. So many of us believe that this tiny credit for raising utilities doesn't reflect the actual savings in damage, but that's the way it is now. Again, this is something the city is working on trying to get FEMA to improve. All right, so let's say they fill in their basement. This again is financially in reach for some people. The cost estimates, it's going to depend on the structure and how deep below ground the basement is, that kind of things. But, I would say it's in the range of, $10,000 to $30,000. Again, not affordable without some kind of help for a lot of low-income homeowners, but maybe in reach for middle-income homeowners. We've got time to work on that. Yeah, but
What is filling the basement with what do you?
well, what you do is, so your clients that come through the RTAPP program are going to be told by the engineer whether or not this is feasible. Because for some homes, you can't do it without changing the pressure on various walls and the house could collapse. So if it's feasible, what it involves is, what they do is they break up the bottom, the cement at the bottom so that it's porous. They fill the basement with sand or gravel or something like that up to ground level. And then what used to be the, top few feet of the basement becomes a crawl space at ground level. They install flood vents. You have to have flood vents or it's not going to protect you. And then, so you're left with a 2-story house, no basement. 2-story house elevated on a crawl space with flood vents.
The very.
But the
Good.
flood vents, how do the flood vents function?
The
I
flood
think it
vents-
is to let the excess water out, but
In both ways. They're actually not so much for drainage as their function is to equalize pressure. Because if you've got water pressure building up on the wall, that can knock the house over or compromise that wall structurally. But if the water can flow in and out, then that pressure is greatly reduced. But yeah, it also helps it drain out. And now there are very strict requirements about what counts as a flood vent and how many you have to have and how high above ground they have to be, but the engineers are going to talk with your clients about all that. Okay, so let's say this woman fills in her basement. Her current premium drops from $5,200 down to $900. So that, for her, that's a home saving mitigation option, right? Her future premium, even if this is her future, drops down to only about $1,000, which again, for many people, that's within the realm of what they can manage.
The bearing wall and the beams, are they affected by that structure, by that flow?
Yeah, I think they can be.
I didn't hear the question.
Okay.
The bearing wall?
Yeah.
Yeah, the question is whether this would affect the bearing walls. That's something that the engineers are going to figure out. And if the basement cannot be filled in without compromising the structure, then the client will be told that by the engineers. So you'll be told when the client comes to you, you'll already know which options are feasible for them. But yeah, not everybody can do this. The same principle also applies, like let's say instead of a basement, this is a subgrade crawl space. Those can be filled in as well, subject to the same engineering determinations that it's feasible. All right, so for this homeowner, that's home saving. If she can find a way to fund it, or if the city or other programs can come up with ways to help lower income people fund it, she's likely to save her home. She's going to lose her basement, right? She's going to lose all that storage space in her basement. Potentially, if there's an apartment there, she loses that. So for clients, this is a difficult trade-off. But this is part of what you're going to try to help clients work through. None of these are easy decisions for any client. All right, the last mitigation option is elevating the home. So basically, in this case, she doesn't have to go up very far, right? Because her ground level is already fairly close to the current base flood elevation in the future. So this already puts her a couple feet above the base flood elevation. There's no basement. This is now an enclosure that can be used only for parking and storage, as well as like entry and exit from the building. This cannot be living space, but it can be storage space. The client just has to remember that if there's a flood coming, get all your stuff out of that basement because none of it's going to be covered by flood insurance. So elevating her home drops down to 500 or below for as far as we can foresee. So this is the golden ticket. For people who are getting it through Build It Back, it's terrific. For people who are not, this the estimates vary about how much it costs to elevate a home, but they're ranging probably between 100,000 and 300,000. Yeah, so.
You're lifting your whole house.
Yeah, they're lifting your whole house, and costs have gone up since Sandy. It's not cheap, but you know, hopefully in the future more programs will come about to help people do this. There's the program Project Uplift now, but the registration for that is closed. All right, so this is one scenario, and the next picture, which is another actual home on Beach 43rd Street, one of our clients. These are both Rockaway clients because I was preparing them for our Rockaway training, but the principles apply. What I want you to notice here, though, is how different these mitigation options affect different properties based on the variables. Okay, so she again, it happens to be a female homeowner again. She's currently in the high-risk flood zone, moving to a high-risk flood zone, staying in the high-risk flood zone. Her current base flood elevation requirement is 6.9 feet. Again, that's 6.9 feet above sea level, right? Her future base flood elevation requirement is 11 feet above sea level. So she just saw a 4-foot jump. Again, this is the part that's now in play as a result of what happened yesterday, but we'll talk about that later. Okay, so again, she's got a house with a basement with machinery in her basement. Her current subsidized premium, as is, this is a pre-1983 home, is $5,467. Now notice, this is very important. Her current unsubsidized premium is $5,000. She is currently overpaying for flood insurance. And we're gonna, teach you how to spot this problem, how to advise people to get out of this subsidy when it's hurting them. It's hurting a lot of people, and we'll go through some examples later. But the way she can do that is with an elevation certificate. All of your clients will have gone through the RTAPP program and gotten elevation certificates. So once this woman gets that elevation certificate, she submits it to her flood insurance company. She then gets rated based on her elevation, not on standard pricing, which is what the subsidized rate is. Based on her elevation, her premium drops by $450 a year, and it's gonna stop increasing, roughly. Okay, her future unsubsidized premium, when the flood elevation goes to 11 feet, her premium jumps to $9,741. That's probably a loss of a home right there, that kind of increase. All right, so what happens if she raises her utilities? She can reduce her current premium down to $4,300. Again, she'll need an elevation certificate to do that after she's got the mechanicals raised. Her future premium, though, it's still $9,000. Okay, she fills in her basement. Her current premium would be $1,566. Huge savings from the $5,000, right? This is definitely worth her while. But in the future, her premium is still $7,758, even with her basement filled in, right? So for her, if this is the future, and this is now a big if, this is a temporary fix. But if this is a 10-year fix, and if the flood maps come out very different, maybe that's worthwhile if she can do it, right? We just don't know what this is going to look like, and for the next probably at least 5 years, she's going to be dramatically reducing her flood insurance. Okay, so she elevates her home. In this case, again, because of the relationships, her elevation is going to have to be a lot higher than that previous one, right? She's going to be a lot higher above ground than the prior example. This space can only be used for parking or storage and entry or egress. There's rules about how it can be finished. We don't need to go into that level of detail, and again, like as with anybody who elevates, their premiums are always going to be the same because they're always going to be 2 feet above the base flood elevation requirement, right? So any client who elevates their home under the building code, like does it legally to the building code requirements, are looking at a premium of $500 or less going forward. Okay, so this is why, you know, you've got to analyze each house differently, because the outcomes of the different mitigations can vary a lot. Okay, so this is just to sort of bullet some of the questions that you will be able to answer for your clients and need to be able to answer for your clients. Is my current flood insurance premium correct? That has to do with that subsidized policy issue, right? If your client is, you know, paying $4,000 now, and you determine based on their current elevation relative to the base flood elevation that their unsubsidized premium would be lower, you can tell a client that and say, okay, get this elevation certificate to your flood insurance broker so that they can correct your premium and reduce it. For some people, you know, the savings are dramatic, you know, several $1,000s. Second question, what will my future premium be under the current firm and roughly under the future firm? So her future premium under the current firm means if she's paying a subsidized rate, what is it going to step up to? Where is she looking at capping out? Most clients right now think that they have capped out, right? They've seen their premiums increase from, you know, $1,800 up to $3,500. They think that's where they are. They don't realize they're going up to $5,000. So that's a question that you can answer for them with respect to their current firm. For the future firm, again, it's in play, but we have to be able to tell people something about the future now. So, okay, how can I reduce my premium? You're going to talk to people about mitigation options, how that's going to affect their premium. You're going to talk to them about coverage options, right? If they have a mortgage, if their mortgage is under $250,000, the unpaid balance, they can reduce their coverage down to the unpaid balance of the mortgage, right? And that is a huge help for a lot of people. They can drop coverage for their contents, which isn't great, but again, if your choice is between losing your home and having no coverage for your contents, that may be a choice you have to make, and clients need to know that these options exist. They can increase their deductible, that's the kind of range, but the main thing they can do is try to figure out a way to make one of these mitigation options work. Okay, and what amount of flood insurance coverage am I required to have? That has to do with if you have a mortgage, if you received FEMA assistance, if you received build-it-back assistance, those all trigger certain coverage requirements. If you received an SBA loan, we're going to cover all those. So this is basically the 4 questions you're going to want to answer for your clients. All right, so again, this is a summary of the phase out of pre-firm subsidy. Go ahead.
Sorry, is there any base estimate for, like, speaking realistically, how many people are expected to go into foreclosure and lose their homes based on the affordability of the new premium?
Well, so the expectation with the premium reductions, that's really, or the phase out of the subsidy, it's really hard to estimate. I mean, when you consider that so many of those areas that got flooded in Sandy were low-income areas, you know, it could be significant, but I just don't think we have a way of estimating. And in the future flood zone, the one that has now been put on hold, you know, again, there were 60,000 owner-occupied homes. I'm trying to remember the statistic from the Center's study, but some incredibly high number of those homes were LMI, low and moderate income homeowners. So it could be really bad.
And the homes that aren't LMI, as we understand it, are usually working class neighborhoods that are LMI plus $1. So these increases are hitting communities that we haven't traditionally served because our funding usually comes for LMI communities. But these rate increases are hitting working class, and lower middle class families just as hard.
Yeah.
So we are talking about all of coastal New York. And even in places like Manhattan Beach, I've talked to people who are like, I'm not going to be able to afford this, and they're sitting in, mansions. So it's a whole, yeah.
And
it's
then,
going to be a big social justice issue.
Right, and then people are also gonna be trapped, so to speak, right? Because once these premium increases start hitting much more broadly and reach certain levels, the home's property value is gonna drop, right? Because you're selling your house and you say it comes with a $5,000 flood insurance premium, a lot of buyers are gonna walk away from that. Your house has lost value, you may find that your mortgage becomes underwater and you're just locked in. You can't leave, you can't stay, it's kind of bad. All right, so I think we covered most of this. The thing about these pre-firm subsidies is it's really only relevant to properties that are in one of the high-risk flood zones, the AE zone or the VE zone. There is such a thing as a pre-firm subsidized rate for people in the X zone, the moderate risk zone, but the tables are identical to the unsubsidized rate, so it's just, doesn't make any difference. They're using the same tables. So if you have a client who's in an AE zone or a VE zone, you need to start thinking about pre-firm subsidy phase out and counseling them on that. And again, the pre-firm subsidized rate is already much more expensive than the standard rate for many clients. So we need to help people lower their rates as best we can. Okay. And one last thing. If, let's say you get an elevation certificate, they submit it to their broker, it turns out that their unsubsidized rate is higher than their subsidized rate, the homeowner has a choice between the two. So they can tell the broker, I want to stay in subsidized, I want to go to unsubsidized. Either way, it's their choice. Should we take a break at like 3:30 or do we? All right, is that good with people? Take a break at 3:30. All right, so this is what a 15% increase looks like. So the subsidies are being phased out in increments of between 15 and 18% per year, which means that your client's premium is going to be increased